What's up, y'all? I wrote Chakra Healing for Your Inner Child. Okay, it's a sick-ass workbook where you examine your personality through the lens of each 7 of the chakras. There are 15 questions for each chakra, and there's even a lower vibrational emotion section for each one, and that talks about sort of like the anti-chakra, right? Like if we think of chakras as being like in the best condition or in the worst condition, having these conditions placed on that chakra creates imbalances. So I want to talk about the imbalances and lower vibration emotions of the heart chakra. So unresolved grief is the enemy of the heart chakra. Grief plugs up the normal flow of love into and out of the heart chakra. The loss of a loved one, the divorce of our parents, the loss of friends, romantic partners, and even our pets passing are all common experiences that lead to grief. This is an obstacle we cannot get away from. Love is balanced by grief, yes, but with the inability to safely attach and detach from our beloved, we get stuck in a cycle. The cycle creates the loss of self. This is because in the safety of a relationship, we see ourselves reflected in our partner. This is the part about a spiritual awakening. In being able to recognize ourselves as the same as others, we begin to understand we are all one. To lose that mirror is a great loss because it is a loss of ourselves. It is important to work on rebuilding the connection with ourselves when our relationships come to their natural end. It is also imperative that we mourn fully. Mourning fully ensures that we do not have emotions stuck in the heart. When there are emotions stuck in the heart, we are unable to give or receive love freely. Above, I mentioned shame as being a lower vibrational emotion for the solar plexus. However, shame also impacts the heart. It creates the same sort of unresolved grief that loss creates because it disconnects us from our authentic feelings and expressions. Without that connection, we are unable to create a satisfying relationship. Our heart can become blocked by shame. The spectrum of distressing emotions caused by shame include the fear to express and give love, as well as the ability to enjoy sexual freedom for worry of rejection and abandonment. To alleviate that shame, we must mourn the loss of our identities from long ago and honor the inner child for the things they did not get to experience. Here, we can begin to glimpse into our shadow and integrate what we are missing from our hidden self. We can then work to create a new and enriched life, one of freedom, authenticity, and self-love. So once you read the lower vibrational sections, there are then 5, sometimes multi-part questions that go into examining your relationship with the lower vibrational emotion of that chakra. And for this one, I want to share a little story about my own life, and I think it's different. It's different from the one that I share in this book. So when I was about 8 years old, my grandfather died, and at that point in time we had moved away from our haunted house and we were now living out in the country, and that was probably one of the worst experiences for me because out in the country my stepmother could beat the shit out of me and there was like no one to hear, you know what I'm saying? So my grandfather had slowly been dying, and because I was isolated from the rest of the family and I wasn't able to build a relationship with my paternal grandmother, I wasn't able to build a relationship with my paternal grandfather. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't empathetic of the situation, because I saw him deteriorating physically to the point where he was no longer able to walk on his own, eat on his own, speak, and he just ended up being in a hospital bed for the rest of that time that I knew these people as a child. Let's just put it that way. And one of the last memories I have of this man is 2, actually, of him falling up the deck of the back porch of my grandmother's house, and then him isolated in the back bedroom in a hospital bed, unable to have any functions controlled because his brain was dying. So it was traumatic in like a lot of ways, but not as much as it was for my grandmother. And when we were living out in the country, we received the news that he had died. And I sort of like took this information in, and then I came in from doing my manual labor, and I was noticeably upset. I was like weeping about the situation. And my stepmother said to me, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "I'm crying because Grandpa died." And she said, "You're not allowed to be sad. You're not allowed to cry about this experience." That really shook me as a young person. I didn't understand why I wasn't allowed to mourn the death of my grandfather, because at the time it was really pretty tragic, and I understood how tragic it was, even though I had been like so brainwashed at that time that I was like just kind of living a physical existence but not really an emotional existence. And I remember being taken aback by it and getting myself together and recognizing that in that moment it wasn't like I already knew it was unsafe, but I really recognized it's not safe for you to have any emotions in front of these people. You need to learn to be completely stoic, isolated, and cut off from your own heart. And so that's what I started doing. I started probably before then, but after that point, it really became something that I knew I had to watch, which means that I wasn't allowed to outwardly experience anything. Joy, grief, sorrow, pain, hunger, nothing. I had to just be a movable pawn for my stepmother to create her life around. This really stuck with me, and it would inform the way that I identify with my feelings for the rest of my life. And now that means, as a 33-year-old person, that I have to rebuild my body's ability to feel emotions and be able to spend time diagnosing what those emotions are, what they feel like in my body, how I can relate to them, how I can express them, what a healthy expression is. All of these things I should have learned as a child by parents modeling appropriate behavior to me, letting me know that it's all right to have my emotions, letting me know I'm safe to express them. Things I didn't get. This created a lot of grief in my heart, and it made it impossible as well for me to mourn the death of my mother until like 15 years after I had learned the news. Trauma to the heart chakra fucks you up. It fucks up your relationship with yourself, and if that relationship isn't right, the way that you build relationships with other people will be inherently toxic. And it's not your fault. It means that you might use tactics of emotional manipulation, making codependent comments, being like, well, does anybody else want a popsicle? Because I'm not going to get a popsicle unless someone else wants a popsicle. Because even though I want one, I'm not allowed to say I want one. Do you know what I'm saying? It's trauma, and it gets stuck there. And unless there's a way to move the briars that surround your heart, all of your relationships and needs and desires are going to be strangled, and there will be thorns in them from times that are no longer existing. So it's important to examine the past traumas of your heart chakra if you want to be fully formed, if you want to be able to give and receive love without fucking addendums attached to them. You can't do this, I won't do this, you aren't doing that, and that's how we'll be safe in a relationship. You have to remove your wounds. You can't expect the world to fucking obey the bubble wrap around your heart. It's impractical, and it won't work.